You're listening to the Journey Podcast. Can aligning your heart and brain lead to a more harmonious and fulfilling life? Listen to today's episode to discover the profound impact of heart-brain coherence and learn how to shift from stressful to heartful for enhanced well-being and happiness. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the Journey Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. Today is part of Mental Illness Awareness Week in the US, and this is a special bonus episode. In this episode, we explore the journey from a state of stressfulness to one of heartfulness, while diving into the fascinating concept of a heart-brain coherence and its impact on our well-being and health. Dr. Madalina Petrescu is a renowned cardiologist who believes in holistic care and an expert and leader in the medical field of cardiology. Her own personal struggles a decade ago related to stress, overwhelm, burnout, and severe back pains led her to a life journey to reconnect with her own heart, awakening her to the deeper meaning of conscious living and what true healing is all about. On her journey, she became passionate about inner growth and personal development to uncover the source of stress and immersed herself in a plethora of programs to enhance personal discovery and deepen her consciousness. She is certified as a consciousness parenting coach. She trained with the world's leading masters and became a practitioner in multiple heart-opening modalities, including reconnective healing, kundalini activation process, and cacao ceremony. She's also an international best-selling author in the Ignite Your Life book series, including Ignite Your Life for Female Leadership, Ignite Your Life for Parenting, and Ignite Love. She believes the greatest source of stress is related to disconnection from one's heart, the most authentic, powerful, and highest version of self, and the source of inherent heart intelligence. Since then, she's been passionate to support others to live an aligned, empowered, and balanced life. She took all the lessons, shifts, and experiences over the past decade in her growth journey, coupled with her 15 years of experience as a cardiologist, taking care of patients with heart disease, and together with her husband, Chris, created two transformational programs called HeartQ and Heart Presence, bridging science and spirituality to support others on their journey to shift living life from stress to living life authentically and on purpose, guided by the intelligence of the heart. Without further ado, here is my interview with Dr. Madalina Petrescu. Hi, Dr. Madalina. It's so great to have you on the podcast today. I've been looking forward to getting to chat with you, and we will be talking about from stressful to heartful, living a heart-centered life. What an amazing topic for holistic healing, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It is such a pleasure for me to be here with you and to share this experience, and especially to talk about this topic that is so absolutely valuable to me.
Yeah, I can't wait to get started. So, do you want to share a little bit about yourself and your own story to get listeners connected to what we're going to be talking about today?
Yeah, definitely. So for me, many years back, more than a decade ago, I was living a life of pure stress. I mean, on the outside, it may have seemed like I had it all, a busy, successful cardiologist, multiple leadership positions. I was a faculty teacher, two beautiful girls, my loving husband. And the outside is like, wow, she's got it all. I was fit and exercising. I'm like, how does she do it? But on the inside, literally, I was struggling. It felt like I was constantly running on the treadmill very fast, very fast-paced life, and everything seemed to be like I was just living in survival mode, not to mention the job of a cardiologist, the long demanding hours, life and death emergencies, sleepless nights, heavy call burden, trying to balance that with family time and with all the other responsibilities that I had. Like me time didn't even exist. Like that was not even something that I considered important or relevant. It was like that was not even in my consciousness. Yes was like kind of fell out of my mouth like that's my duty, and no felt wrong, as if I didn't have a right to say no. Like that was never part of my consciousness. And so that's what my life was about. And I didn't realize that at that time that so much of my stress was actually related to a whole bunch of unconscious patterns that I was operating from, that was coming from within, patterns of overachiever, perfectionism, workaholism, people pleaser, yes sayer, self-denial. All of these literally had created the life that I was living. And I didn't know at that time that all these patterns were actually emerging from this limited belief of not enoughness. I had no idea, so I was just kind of living my life thinking that's normal, thinking, well, I just have to work harder and do more and rush more, and maybe I'll be happy. And I was always doing the best with what I knew. And the way that I kept myself sane in this kind of way of living was I used to run. Like I used to go and run every single day. So if something were to happen that would be like not positive, I would just keep running and make myself happy and not pay attention to my feelings, my emotions, or I didn't realize I was actually running away from me and my life. So I was just running. And then my whole life completely changed when I had a back injury. I went for a run and then I had a back injury. All of a sudden, I developed this severe back pain. I couldn't walk. I literally limped home. And for the year that followed, I spent every single free time that I had trying to get cured, trying to get myself rid of this back pain that was so excruciating. And here I am going to all the doctors, multiple tests, nothing to be found. And I'm just like, what is going on here for 1 year? So I literally could barely walk. And not to mention, I developed even more pain. Like I developed hip pain, plantar fasciitis, sciatica, iliopsoas, all kinds of things. I could barely move. So my life went from being there it was, to now completely dismantled. It threw me into a crisis. After 1 year of finding no cure, only getting worse, I literally entered into a crisis of anxiety and depression and unfulfillment. I didn't know what was going on. And that's when everything literally shifted, because this whole experience actually threw me into an awakening to wake up. Like that crisis became the portal to my own awakening, because the pain that I had, life had brought me to a stop. I couldn't run anymore. I couldn't walk anymore, to stop the doing. And I started being present to myself, being present to me. I started going on this inner journey of massive self-reflection, all kinds of immersions, started really realizing, wow, so much of what I was suffering from is because I never took the time to put me first, to put my heart first, to reflect, to go within and discover, what is it that I want? What is it that's aligned with me? What is it that I want to say yes to me, rather than just saying yes to everyone and saying no to me? So through all of that, my husband joined me in this inner adventure. My girls got to witness the whole process of this transformation, and, years of inner journeys that I did in multiple modalities, all kinds of healings. And that brought me to my greater purpose and passion, which is really because what I had realized for myself is that the degree of stress that I was experiencing was related to the degree of misalignment for my true authentic self. And so then my life became about, wow, the more that I can open up to my true authentic self and experience what's true, experience what's loving, connect to my purpose, and start living an aligned life. Now, everything in my life started to change. Like once I changed and once I shifted, everything changed in my life. My friends changed, my life changed, what I was doing changed. And now this is my greater purpose. It got me to where I am now with my husband. And, we have this program called HeartQ, which is, you've heard of EQ, IQ, this is HeartQ, connecting people to their own innate heart intelligence and living life guided from that space of the heart. And that's where we believe you create the inspired life, the abundant life, the aligned and fulfilled life. So that's a little bit of me.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story. And I am fascinated by the fact that as a cardiologist, you are teaching about heart intelligence. I love that. So, synchronicity. And it happens very often, especially as women, that we tend to put everything and everyone else in our lives first. And we forget that we can't really give or be there for everyone until we are centered and aligned as well, and we have a fulfilled life. So, yeah, so interesting. And thank you for sharing that. Now, there's a crisis that happened in your life when you had the back injury. And sometimes the body does that. It'll stop us in our tracks if we are not aligned with our purpose. So, do you feel like this health crisis really was sort of a wake up call to understand that you weren't really following your path?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I feel that what actually happened, that crisis that I experienced, was a direct result of how misaligned I was living my life. I was not living my life from myself. I didn't even know who I was because I was just identifying with all the shoulds, with trying to fit into the expected standards and the demands. And, living life from more the psychological conditioning that I wasn't aware of. I had no idea. And so it's interesting because literally, I believe that this was the greatest gift that I received. I know the crisis, I believe, is what happened when I'm so out of alignment that eventually, when I keep operating from a place that's not authentic to me, I'm going to hit walls. I'm going to hit all kinds of crises, the anxiety, the depression, the physical pain that I was experiencing. It was literally my whole body, my whole being was in pain from being out of connection with my true authentic self. So it was the greatest gift. Otherwise, I would have just kept going. Who knows? Maybe I would have gone to the doctor and they would have said, hey, take some antidepressant. You're depressed. Or why don't you take some anxiety medication? And why don't you just stop exercising and try to find a way to, who knows? I could have gone on living my life completely numbing, not really facing what was really deeply the core problem here, which is me not being fully connected with myself, not being connected with that. We all have that inner light, that inner vitality, which actually even science is catching up, and you can actually even measure the electromagnetic field of our heart. And so I was not connected there. I was living life from a place that was not authentic to me. So I really see all crises, to be honest, I see them as happening for us, not to us. And it's kind of I see them as invitations to return and realign with who we really are deep within.
Yeah, that's wonderful wisdom. Thank you for sharing that. And when we talk about heart coherence, there's a couple of things to look at. So first of all, there's, like you said, the scientific side of the heart coherence that now we can actually measure and we can do studies about that. And there's also the more emotional and mental side of it on how people perceive coherence in their lives. So do you want to maybe talk a little bit about what heart coherence is so that our listeners can understand what we're talking about and how that shows up in science and in your life and how you perceive heart coherence?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to kind of, for the sake of contrast, helps to kind of really bring and illustrate these amazing points. So when we're out of heart coherence, then what's happening is that the heart is not leading the way. Einstein, I love Einstein when he said, our intuition is our faithful guide, and the rational mind is a servant. But we have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. What happens is when we're not connected and plugged into the essence of our being, which is our heart, the default, unfortunately, falls into the stress of the mind, the stress of the shoulds and the fears. And so stress is guiding the way in life. That's just the default. And that's what happens when we're out of coherence. And it's interesting because our hearts actually, it records and mirrors and sends, there's more pathways to the brain from the heart to the brain than vice versa. So when the heart is not being engaged, and there's no coherence, means the heart is not being utilized and there's stress, the heart actually can feel that. And the heart sends all kinds of these chaotic frequency type of signals to the brain The brain in the state of stress is perceiving danger, threat, and it actually deactivates that smart part of the brain that we have. It actually activates the amygdala, which is a reactive brain. Why we get more reactive? It atrophies in our amygdala. And I mean, our amygdala, our hippocampus, the memory cells. Why people, when they're stressed, they can't think, they can't remember, everything is unclear. And it throws us into these hormones of stress, cortisol and adrenaline, which, makes our bodies sick. And so when we're out of alignment and we're not in coherence, this is what ends up happening. You end up having the mind is not being fully utilized, which is why there's confusion, there's lack of clarity, there's fogginess, there's negative thinking. The amygdala is activated, which is why people are more reactive, more impulsive. And the physical body is getting literally like you're in a state of stress, you're in a state of cortisol and adrenaline. So all the energy is being diverted to deal with the stress ahead. And so your immune system is deactivated. The stress is going against your cardiovascular system. That's why people are getting more sick. Your longevity is actually impacted. The telomeres are shortened. So whenever there is incoherence, this is what's happening. You're basically hurting. It's a lose, lose, lose in the sense of your emotional, your intelligence, your physical, your well-being, your health. Whereas when there is a state of coherence, meaning that in the state of coherence, you're letting the heart lead the way. So you're getting plugged into, connecting to, the fountain of love and truth and presence that we all have deep within our hearts. And when that happens, we connect to things like care, compassion, truth. When that's happening, now the heart actually starts creating this electromagnetic field. It's like the light is getting turned on within us. You can tell when somebody's in their heart, right? And then what's happening is the heart, when it's in its essence, it actually sends these really harmonious signals into the brain. And the brain sees that and says, okay, got it. All is well, well-being, healthy. Great. And now the brain, and it's shown this, it actually now floods the body and the brain with these well-being, health, pro-relaxation, pro-joy, pro-clarity kind of hormones and biomarkers. And now the brain is actually fully activated. You can see this on the MRI studies. The frontal cortex is operating better. The amygdala, that reactive brain, gets deactivated. Your memory cells get activated. Now your body's flooded with these kinds of well-being hormones, pro-health hormones. And that's when you have that state of coherence. This is really what attributes for the flow states, when a person's in that flow state, when you're like in the state of presence and beingness, we're human beings. And when you're in a state of connection, when you're in a state of feeling the abundance that's all around us. And when we're operating life from that place compared to the stress, there's a whole different reality that is available to us. So that's what coherence is.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And as a cardiologist, I'm going to ask you something that I heard, and let's see if that's true. Now, I have read online that the heart actually has its own nervous system, and it kind of acts like a brain in itself, like a heart brain. So does that mean that instead of the heart just being some organ, in our body, that the heart can kind of think for itself to a certain degree, and it can, like you said, communicate with the brain and also make decisions and affect our physical, mental, emotional body? Is that kind of what's happening?
Yeah, it's really, really fascinating because they have shown, HeartMath has done a lot of research. So the heart has at least, that what we know, 40,000 neurons that operate similar to brain, but it's its own, and it operates, feels and thinks and decides and memory completely separate from the brain. And so when those are activated and those are stimulated, that's a lot of the basis of that inner knowing, that inner truth, that inner intelligence. And it's really interesting because when you do heart transplants and you transplant a heart from one person to the other, right? Those people that are receiving the heart transplants, they start having memories. They start having tastes and things that they desires and memories and feelings that they had not had before. So then, even like murder mysteries have been solved about the memories that have happened. So yeah, this is something that now is catching up. And this is what is attributed to contribute to this heart intelligence, that it's coming from rising within the heart itself. And so if we can allow that intelligence to be tapped into and expanded on, and then the brain can come into alignment with that, that's where we believe we can create that way of living that's harmonious and that's in alignment and in coherence.
Wow, that's incredible to have these thoughts and feelings and smells and tastes and from a heart transplant. Incredible. Wow. Now, I'm sure that listeners are curious. We're talking about this heart coherence, but how do you make that happen? How can people tap into that? Or how can they fully take advantage of that and really bring their brain and heart into coherence?
Yeah, exactly. So here's the thing. Normally, most of the time and most of the people are literally living in the mind, right? We're going fast. So when you're operating in that way, you know how the thoughts are going fast forward, thinking about the past, worrying about the future. So you're stuck in this mind, and the brain has a specific brainwave pattern called the beta wave. So like you and I are talking and there's a lot of conversations, or there's a lot of thinking, there's a lot of analysis, or there's a lot of emotional reactivity. Can't let the heart lead the way. The heart is going to be blocked. So that whole coherence and that whole axis is completely blocked. So in order to get into the heart and create that coherence, we got to get ourselves everything slowing down, just slowing down a little bit, slowing down a lot of times, just intentionally. I'm slowing down. I'm taking deep breaths. I'm relaxing. And the more deep breaths and the more we relax, then what happens is you come out of the beta kind of pathway into the alpha, which is a bit more relaxed. And now when we're more relaxed, we're not grasping or attaching. Now we can be more open to suggestions. So when that happens, it's just 3 deep breaths, 3 slow, deep breaths, and slowing down. Now it gets you from that sympathetic nervous system to the parasympathetic nervous system, which is more relaxing. It gets you from that thinking and doing to being. Okay. And when that happens, that's the first step. We call that the first step of, slowing down and breathing. The second step, now that you've slowed down, now that we're taking our time and breathing, now we're open. Now we're open to number 2, bring awareness to your heart. So now when you bring the awareness to the heart, now you're open because you're in the state of relaxation. And when you bring awareness to the heart, the third part is to feel. The heart feels, the mind thinks. So you feel, you bring in a heart-based emotion like compassion, like care, like joy, just even the word of care, compassion, that in itself creates that feeling within your whole body. And if some people are having a hard time, even bringing to your awareness a person that you love that makes you smile, or an experience. You and I were talking earlier about the experience on the beach, that relaxes. Now that feeling then takes over. So now you drop the story and you're just sitting there in that feeling. And now your heart is expanded, and now you're in a state of coherence. And then from that state, then you simply can bring questions, like bring the questions that you have to your heart. But first you got to get to that place, and you bring a question that you have, whatever question you may have, that we want answers to. You bring that question and then you let it go. And you just sit here and you receive. You receive it, you listen to it. And then the last step is you can take an action on that question. So this is like the short, and it really can take as much as you want. It can take 3 minutes. Like I do this, I get to work, I do this short process. Or in the morning when you're doing your meditation, you can take longer, because when you're in that space of coherence, in harmony with your heart, it's like, you're there because you never want to leave, because you're like, this feels so good. Okay, now I'm connected to who I really am. And that's how you know. When you're in that space, that's how you know. That's coherence.
Yeah. And it obviously made a huge change in your life when you started working with the heart coherence, and made a difference in your stress levels, your physical experiences, also with the pain. Now, are those common things that people experience when they actually tap into this heart coherence? Do they find that they can heal some of the mental and emotional issues that are going on, address some of the physical ailments that they're having? Is that a common thing that happens?
Oh my goodness, so common. I mean, for me personally, prior to when I was in that stress, stress is 90% of the doctor visits. If you were to dissect it, where it's coming from, it's literally stress. For me, like I literally had so many ailments. I had all these back pains. I didn't mention I had like these recurrent pneumonias. I had these GI issues. I was constantly like getting sick. I remember that, anxiety, depression, all of that. It all went away. Like it is so rare for me to get sick. Like it just doesn't happen. And even with clients and with people, it is something that it's a side effect. Like, it's just something that naturally and easily happens, because now instead of the cortisol and the catecholamine hormones flooding the body, which literally depletes your energy and makes you sick because it has a negative impact in your whole entire physical and mental and emotional part of you, now you're flooded with the different kinds of hormones and biomarkers that are pro-health, pro-well-being. And now, yeah, your immune system is activated, your cardiovascular system is activated, your brain is activated. It's a completely absolute shift, and it all comes down to the core. So yeah, this is something that happens. People let go and they drop all these things because they no longer identify with the mind. They no longer identify with these limiting beliefs that they believed was true. They're no longer, engaging in activities and ways of being that are actually going against themselves, that are actually not loving to the self, so naturally all kinds of healing happens. It's emotional healing, mental healing, physical healing.
Yeah, it sounds like a completely different way of living and a different perspective and approaching life in a different kind of way than just running around completely stressed and burning yourself out. So, wow. And I do hope that listeners go back to where you were explaining the 3 steps and they actually start applying some of that in their own lives to see what happens and what kind of changes happen for them. So wonderful. Thank you so much for that. And do you want to go over some of the programs and services that you offer? So if people feel inspired by listening to this episode, they know how to connect with you and how they can work with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Like our program, everything that we have is found in heartq.com. And we have a master program that is called Unleash Your Heart. And literally, it does exactly that. It helps guides people in how they can shift from this stressful to heartful way of living by kind of 3 processes. One is the process of reflection and self-awareness. And when you say that, it's like, where do you even begin, right? It's like, what does that even mean? So we kind of like took all of our own experiences over a decade and we codified it into a beautiful processes that number 1 is self-awareness, being present to what are those parts of ourselves that we've identified with that is not really who we are. How do we let them go? How do we shift them? And the second part is, okay, if we're not all those layers, then who are we really? How do we tap into our heart? How can we access that and understand more of who we are, our purpose, our truth? What does that even mean? Most people are not used to that. And then step number 3, now that we've uncovered what is true and what is our truth and what is loving and what is heart versus what is not true, how do you now create from that place? How do you show up in life from that place of truth and create that alignment? So, and how do you manifest from that place? That's the third part. So this is our master program that we have that we feel is absolutely incredible. People have had so much powerful impact, to be honest. But over there, we have all kinds of other things, meditations, coaching, all kinds of possible ways to get people to support their connection back to their heart.
Yeah, those sound like amazing programs. And we will be linking to all of Dr. Madalina's offerings in the show notes as well. So be sure to check there on how you can connect with her and how you can work with her if you feel like this episode really inspired you to live a more heartful life. Well, this has been an incredible episode, and I hope our listeners have enjoyed this journey into living a heart-centered life as much as I have. It has been fantastic chatting with you on the podcast today, Dr. Madalina. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you so much. It has been absolutely a pleasure for me to be here with you and to share this space. And I look forward to more to unfold. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Such an important topic to talk about because I think it doesn't get talked about enough. So absolutely. And I can't wait to see what else you create and bring into this space to help people live a more heart-centered life. Thank you so much and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Journey podcast, please support us by subscribing, sharing on social media, and leaving us a review. We appreciate you. And you can find more of The Journey on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and our website, thejourney.com. Sending you love and courage, and see you next time.